Sofgen is a global IT consultancy that focuses strictly on banking. We started operations as a company in 1999, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. However, we expanded to Africa in 2007, precisely, through an acquisition of a local company that was already operating in this market. So we basically took over the client base of that local company and ran with it and expanded the client base. So we actually started operations focusing on Africa as part of our global market in 2007. What do? We provide IT solutions to banks, and we're focused strictly on banking. So we are a niche player in that respect. Now, within the bank, what do? There are 4 key areas that we focus on, one of which is core banking. And the core banking system is like the central nervous system of any bank, because this is where you do most of your accounting. This is where you track the loans that you give out and the repayment. This is where you track the deposit and the withdrawals. And this is where you do all the fancy things that banks do, like Forex, treasury, money market, etc., etc. So that's an area where we have expertise. Specifically in Africa, we've partnered with the market leader in the core banking space, and that market leader is known as Temenos. They have a world-class product that is called T24, which is very popular not only in Kenya, but across Africa. So Sofgen is one of the global partners of Temenos globally. So that's one area. And now, what do we do in respect to Temenos? Aside from educating customers on what Temenos can do, we actually get the customer to define their requirements, to configure the system to meet their needs, as well as to train them on how to use the system. We help them integrate the system into the different other systems that they might have, and we provide ongoing support. So the analogy I like to give is that you go to the market, you buy a fabric, but it is still a fabric. You need a tailor that will cut the fabric, to your exact specification. So in the software space, we are that tailor. You have bought T24, we now fit T24 into your environment. That's on the core banking space. Digital banking is also big nowadays. Banks are talking about digital transformation. So we have expertise in helping the bank, move from, brick and mortar branch sort of operation into channel banking, wherein your customer would carry the bank in their pocket rather than walk into a branch. We have a lot of expertise in that space. We have aligned with a product that is called NetTeller, which is very popular and widely deployed in this market. Credit risk management is also an area of expertise of ours, where we equally partner with quite a number of banks across Africa. In the past, loan processing is tedious. You wait weeks on end just to get a feedback from the bank. And then the process of actually appraising the loan is largely based on relationship. And that has, created problems for quite a number of banks. Now, the regulators are demanding that banks should make decisions, using data rather than, just relationship. So we have a solution that actually automates the loan origination process, meaning that you can discard the papers and actually apply for your loan online. The system will help you carry out the appraisal of the loan, depending on what criteria you want to use for that particular loan type. So whether it is demographics you want to use, whether it is the banking activity that you want to use, or whether it is financial ratio that you want to use, our system is able to bring all of this together and then give you a score, which then enables you to decide, is this guy going to be able to repay this loan, or is it not going to be able to repay this loan? So in the credit risk management space, we have very strong expertise, and quite a number of the well-established banks here are actually clients of ours in this space. Quite a number of areas, but one other interesting area that we equally focus on is fraud prevention and detection. Research has shown that almost 70% of fraud in banks always have insider influence. So how do you mitigate this? So we have aligned with a product or a solution that actually keeps the log of what each and every user is doing and tries to understand the behavior of that user who is an employee of the bank. And based on the behavior of that user, is able to predict that this sequence of activities that have been carried out by this user has the potential of leading to an infraction. And it's a system that we equally installed very widely in this market. So those are some of the key areas that we're into and that we focused on as an organization. Individual banks will probably have their own fintech subsidiary. And the reason they will probably want to adopt that strategy is in order to avoid the very strict regulation that banks are subjected to, which a lot of these fintechs would, they won't directly fall under the central bank, So I see a lot of them, coming up with their own fintech, they'll be able to move in other directions, perhaps partnering with insurance companies and being able to also sell products, insurance products, perhaps partnering with airlines and being able to sell tickets, via the platform and things like that. I see a lot of that happening in the market. I also think that some of the small banks that we have in that space will probably not be able to compete. And so they will either become niche players in certain areas and move away from retail banking, which some of these fintechs and big banks will probably dominate. I see that emerging as some of the things that would happen in the near future. And Kenya is a particularly interesting market, because you've got the DTMs, the deposit-taking microfinance institutions who are focused on certain market. You have the SACCOs who are equally, doing their own thing. So it's a very competitive market, really. I see a lot of consolidation, especially in terms of technology. A DTM or a SACCO would want to be able to provide the same kind of service that a KCB or an equity bank is providing. However, they wouldn't have the capital to invest, to be able to do that. But if the SACCOs will come together and partner with an institution, they might be able to pool their resources together and be able to deliver. And I think a lot of that is most likely going to happen in the very foreseeable future, whereby these SACCOs or these DTMs will actually work together and partner with one institution that is able to deliver digital banking as a service to these institutions in a most cost-effective manner. Maybe not CapEx based, but operational expense based. Yes, retail banking is probably the easier bit, to address because we're talking about, perhaps small amounts. Corporate banking, in my opinion, would not rely completely on data. There will be a combination of data as well as relationship. But the practice whereby banks sit back and wait for a corporate customer to come and approach them for a loan, I think that is going to change if it hasn't already started changing. Some of my customers in the corporate banking, the SME banking space, today have the capability to look at the financial statement of their customers, carry out a projection, and be able to determine that company B would need this amount of working capital 6 months down the line. So they're in a position where they can be proactive. So
they go to the customer.
They actually go to the customer to say, look, we've looked at your numbers. We know that 6 months from now, you're going to need working capital of around this much. We have pre-qualified you. It's not, now we have pre-qualified you, for this amount, making the life of that entity, a lot simpler. That is what I think corporate banking is going into. And I think it's already happening at some level, but eventually that is going to be the way forward. I would say that banks are beginning to wake up to the reality of the environment that we're in. The fact that the customers are now learned and sophisticated, and to the fact that the employees equally are learned and sophisticated. Banks are beginning to invest in some of these technology that I talked about, that enables you to match the different logs and be able to build patterns. I do know that there are quite a number of banks in this market that have already made that investment. But it's one thing to make the investment. It's a different thing to be able to interpret the data. Perhaps that's an area where banks need to improve today. Perhaps there needs to be investment in training and ensuring that, yes, when the data is there, somebody can actually interpret it and say, this is what this means, number one. Number two, and also being able to react very quickly to change, the system that actually made that infraction possible in the first place. If the policy says that you need to have 2 approvers before something can be done, maybe the process of waiting for the second approvee or approver, there could be a gap there.
Yes.
So maybe that's something you need to quickly respond to and tighten very closely. I don't see that happen very quickly today at the banks. It still takes them maybe 3 months, 6 months, because they can change quite a number of the guidelines. In this environment that we're moving into, there will be more reliant on partners, to be able to guide, to be able to build that trusted partner relationship, trusted advisor relationship with banks, and then be able to move into the strategy that any bank wants to pursue. I think the era where banks just identify vendors are over, and then you pick vendors every now and then, new vendors every now and then, as for one reason or the other. I would imagine that the bank that would succeed in this space will be that bank that will identify a few partners and be able to unveil their roadmap, 3, 4, 5 years roadmap to the partner. Say, this is where we're going, this is where we want to be 5 years from now. We know that you're reputable, we know that you're knowledgeable, we know that you have the capability to guide us to get to our destination. How can we partner to do this? This is not something you can do with everybody. You have to actually identify the company. I think this is probably an area that banks need to start thinking about, looking at real partners, not vendors, especially in some of these very capital intensive on the one hand, high risk on the other hand. And thirdly, once you set on a particular strategy, it's difficult to do a U-turn overnight. You lose speed, you lose momentum, and then some other people would take advantage and move on. So that would be my final comment. As Sofgen, that is what we offer our customers. We strive to become trusted advisors. We are thought leaders in the areas that we operate in. And we are a well-established company, working in over 100 countries across the globe. We're able to bring to bear what we learn in the advanced world, coupled with local knowledge that we know, that we have, and be able to fashion out jointly with the bank, you know, what would work within the local environment. That is one very strong capability that we offer our customers.